Hello, this is Pixel Freak, and I've got part 50 of the Final Fantasy Dimensions walkthrough here. So we've left Odin's castle. We are on our way now to the next dungeon, which is an underground base of some sort. So, heading that way. A few fights on the way. This is the last dungeon of this particular section of the game. Once you clear this dungeon, there'll be a little story piece at the end, and then you'll end up somehow or another with the dancer job for this team. So Noct and everybody else here can become the dancer. Noct would make a pretty dancer. So here we go. And again, this piece, I actually played through this part quite a long time ago now. It's probably been 2 or 3 weeks. I've actually put this game down while I was doing a bunch of stuff here at my house, doing some renovation work. So because I'd put it down for so long, I'll be commenting more reactionarily, if that's a word, as I remember. As I remember how the game actually played out, I'll make comments. So, and I mentioned this in the last video, but the dancer job in this game, I really like to use the dancer as kind of a backup healer. For the most part, I think on average fights, she ends up being a slow, she doesn't end up being slow. She ends up casting slow, or casting a strength buff for the whole party. When she's not doing that in bigger fights, Oh, frailty. I actually use frailty. It's not strength for me, it's weakening for the other team. I like slow a little bit better, I think, between the two. But on boss fights, the dancer makes a really good backup healer, and the dancer can use an Osmo stance, which allows the dancer to heal back a lot of magic points. It really helps. Now, the dancer doesn't work very well as a primary healer. I really wouldn't recommend that. You're going to lose a lot of HP really quick. She just can't heal that fast. Not only that, but her heal spell drains a lot of mana in comparison. And that's based on how much it actually heals. It doesn't heal that much for how much it costs. But the fact that you can, restore your mana fairly quickly, it really helps. But because of all that, she can't really act as a primary healer. Completely a fifth character. It's a wingman. It's a wingman position, and I think because it's a wingman position, it makes a really good fifth character. I think once the dancer's gone, I don't know that I'll have another dancer right away, unless I have somebody else that can play one of the other major roles. If there was another job in the fifth position that was doing like tanking or something like that, then I think I could have a dancer. And basically the way my team is set up right now, I've got 2 DPS characters. That's the monk and the black mage. They're supposed to be the damage dealers. And the warrior is supposed to be the one that's taking the brunt of all the attacks, and the healer is supposed to heal. In this game, it doesn't really work out completely that way, because the warrior doesn't really draw attacks very well. So the monk and the warrior, they usually take the most of the damage. They're also the only characters that are in the front row. And then the black mage still does a decent amount of damage, but I think in this game black mages don't do enough damage. I like black mages in games to do a ton of damage, but then run out of magic points relatively quickly. That way you kind of reserve them. They're kind of like the big guns for the bigger fights. In this game, they don't run out of magic points very quickly. If you run straight through a dungeon, if you know where you're going, you can collect everything and get to the boss. And I think every dungeon that I've run into so far, you can get to the boss before you run out of magic points. And I should mention too, there's a formula to the way that this game has presented dungeons where there's just enough mana to get you to the boss, but there's always a save spot at the boss. Always a save spot. And in some dungeons that the game designers thought were too long, there's actually 2 save spots. And it's designed that way on purpose. They don't want you running a magic. They don't want you to get frustrated. But that's not how black mages should work. Black mages should work where you have to play conservatively because they are a scarce resource, right? They're supposed to run out of mana. I may have missed a treasure box back there. I think I just saw one, but it passed too quickly. So there you go. You can see I'm using the cure spell there. I think I'm changing it up, trying to experiment a little bit here with different mechanics, trying to fight these battles faster. In this particular video, I didn't cut out any of the fights either, and I think that's going to be more typical moving forward. I know through this walkthrough, I've gone back and forth. Sometimes I cut them out, sometimes I don't cut them out. In the past, I've cut them out just because it allows me to cut down this commentary. I don't have to sit here and do commentary as long, because I do run out of things to talk about, believe it or not. But also, a lot of people are just watching these videos to see how the map works, to see where exactly to go, and the fights get in the way of that. I got some comments on the Final Fantasy III walkthrough saying, oh, you should have cut out the fights because this is taking forever. I think in the future my reaction to that's just going to be tough, because the editing on these walkthrough videos, it's a nightmare going through and trying to take out all the fights. In some situations, it's a good thing for me to do just because it allows me to not have to sit here and do all the commentary. There's a couple of the videos that were like an hour long, but because I trimmed all the fights out of it, and because I trimmed out all the places where I took wrong turns, because that happens once in a while, I cut it down to like 35 minutes or something like that. A couple videos were like that, where they were almost cut in half. And that makes a big difference, you know, with the commentary. So anyways, look out for that. I'm being more direct with my recordings, trying to do better recording, and there's going to be less editing going forward. So there'll be more fights involved. So here, right after I just got done saying how the black mage keeps their MP, the white mage ran out. And that might be there in this dungeon. There might be, oh, that's the one I was talking about. I went back for it. Good enough. In this dungeon, there might be enemies that are sapping mana points. That might be why I had to use ethers there. I haven't noticed it, but then again, I'm auto battling for the most part. Not paying close attention, I guess. There's a chance too that I just didn't walk into this dungeon with full mana. I did notice that I just kind of walked in from the last dungeon. So if I didn't heal up at the end of the last dungeon or use a cabin or a couple tents or something, that could explain that as well. I also could have had Curaja still on my auto battle from the fight with Odin. That'll burn up a white mage's mana really quick too. You need to make sure that you change your auto battle cure to something like Cura, just because even though you'll slowly wear your HP down because you won't be able to heal quite fast enough. Oh, awesome. Save spot right after I just used a couple ethers. Just go with the cottage. Even though you'll wear your HP down by using Cura on your auto battle, you'll never really die. As long as you keep an eye on it, it'll keep you going for a while, and then maybe after 4 or 5 fights, you stop, cure up your guys, and then continue on. Burning Knuckles. I should put those on. Maybe not. For those of you wondering why I didn't put those on right away, that's because I kind of have this philosophy with RPG games that I think that menu time really burns up a lot of your time. This is especially bad in games like Diablo, Champions of Norath. Name drop there for those of you that actually know what Champions of Norath is. But those games, you spend like half your time in the menus. It's really awful. Inventory management's horrible in those games, and I find that Final Fantasy is not quite as bad. Most of them aren't. But I still have gained a philosophy from playing games like Diablo that inventory management is a bad thing, and you should minimize the amount of time that you're doing that. If your party is sufficient where you are, then you shouldn't be in there equipping all this new equipment, because the time you're going to save by fighting new battles with the new equipment doesn't merit the time that it takes to go into your equipment to find whatever piece landed wherever in your inventory and then find the best person for you to use it. There we go, I just ran through. So what I do is what I'm doing right now. I just run through real quick, make sure I optimize on everybody, make sure that everybody has the weapons that I wanted on them. Like you can see here, the Black Mage. I hate that the game does that. When you optimize, it always optimizes based on attack power, but with the Black Mage, a lot of times you want to have magic. I understand why they did it the way they did. I just wish that it didn't end up affecting the way that I want to play every single time. So I'd always optimize, then have to flip the weapon back. But anyways, I try to minimize the amount of time because I think that we spend too much time in inventory screens. I think that's actually been a downfall for games like Diablo as well, where people realize they're spending so much time in inventory. If you ever did play Champions of Norath and you played that game multiplayer, holy lord, that was... I used to play that 3-player with my wife's 2 little brothers. They're significantly younger than her, and so it was kind of like having little kids around, right? Almost like having my kids, but they're probably just young enough to be my kids, and so they're kind of in this weird in-betweeny stage with me, and so it was really cool to play video games with them as they were growing up, and they're in their mid-teens now, both of them are. But we'd play Champions of Norath, and playing that game multiplayer was the most horrible experience as far as inventory management goes. Everybody wants to buy and sell at different times, and so we're always running back to town. Somebody's out of space in their inventory, and of course they don't want to, miss picking up some rare item off the ground before somebody else does. So they have to go in their inventory and manage their inventory. When you have 3-4 people doing that all at the same time, you spend over half your time you spend sitting there in the menu, going through your inventory. It's really bad. But the multiplayer in that game, though, is phenomenal. Like, I love playing that game multiplayer. When I play it now, I set ground rules. Like, nobody goes in their inventory, except for every 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Even then, there's limits on how much you can do it. If you run out of inventory, you just don't get to pick up items for a while. I guess I'm coming off kind of like a dick. I'm militant. I'm very militant about how we do inventory management in video games. But it cheapens the experience. It lessens the experience for people that don't pick up every single item in a game like that has inventory issues. In a game like this, you don't have that. But then again, this doesn't have multiplayer, so you're not being impacted by that. In this type of game, your enemy is you. How much time you spend in the menus is kind of up to you. But it can significantly increase the amount of gameplay time, if that's something that matters to you, that it takes to beat a game. Now, if only I could get down the amount of time that I spend grinding. I have a funny habit with that. Like, a lot of people will go through an RPG and they're trying to fight as few fights as possible and get through the game as quickly as possible, so the bosses are actually very challenging. In most Final Fantasy games, that's not the approach I take. I usually will go out and grind and make myself way more powerful than I need to be, then I'll go to the boss and just kind of like walk through it. That happened. I was a horrible offender of that in Final Fantasy 12. Really bad. I way over level in that game. In this game, I'm over leveling quite a bit, but it's not because I'm trying to make the game easier. It's just because grinding is something I can do off camera, and so I do it a lot. So I think we're coming up here on the boss, and I do believe I got every treasure box out of this dungeon. If I missed one, let me know. I'll put an annotation in. I said that funny. Annotation in. I don't think I missed any. But I am kind of like standing there right here. Kind of sat there for a second. Can't make up my mind. I probably should have edited that out, but whatever. Alright, here we go. So, boss time. So we are fighting... Man, I can't even remember his name now. Asmodai. This is the second fight from Asmodai. I think the last time we fought him Asmodai was in, what's the name of it? The big tree. Now we're fighting him again. Yggdrasil. There we go. That was the name of the place, was Yggdrasil. The Elf Town. The big castle there. Ooh. Plot twist. It's funny though, like, I understand what they're doing in this game, and they're trying to have a really good story in this game. Not really good. They're trying to have kind of a throwback story and kind of a nostalgic thing. And they're trying to get you connected to these characters. Unfortunately, the way they wrote the formula out for this game, where it's, you know, you go to a new section, you get a new member, that member goes through this kind of small story arc, and then you have a big reveal at the last boss, and then that reveal ends up having some plot twist. It doesn't work though, because you never really get attached to the fifth party member. You don't even really get attached to the regular party members. I don't have any emotional connection to any of these characters. I really don't care. So anyways, in this particular fight, it's a special fight. You have to use the dancer to identify, there's an identifier or uncover ability that Montoya has. With that uncover ability, Asmodai becomes attackable. In the very beginning here, it doesn't make a lot of sense to hit him. If I remember correctly, you just can't. You just have to let some time pass. Here we go. There we go. Sense weakness, crystal eye. So once you've sensed weakness on him, there he is. He reappears. So in this fight, I just leave her on that ability and just doing it to him over and over again, because he's going to vanish over and over in the fight. If you want to flip her back and forth between a couple different abilities, that's okay. Just know that he's going to go disappear relatively often, and you're going to need to flip it back to that crystal clear thing to uncover over and over again. Sense weakness, that's what you need to use. Use sense weakness over and over and over. So aside from him disappearing, he's not a very tricky boss. It's just that you have to manage his disappearing the whole time. And it really does take away that extra heal that I was talking about more at the beginning of this video. Montoya just really doesn't have a chance to do cast or to do the cure dance. If you do, you run the risk of basically taking her out of commission for a while. He'll go invisible, and makes all your offensive characters just twiddle their thumbs while they can't do anything, and Montoya has to finish her cure dance and then flip over to sense weakness again. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Just leave her on sense weakness and then let her go. But again, if you find fit to do it another way, so be it. This is just what worked for me. Oh, he's tricky. So there you go, right there, he did it twice in a row. And that's exactly my point on why you need to leave sense weakness as the auto battle for Montoya. Because you need to get him back on the field as fast as possible, especially if you have your black mage or your summoner casting something really big like Ifrit or something else that's or they're large, you're just going to miss completely, and you're going to waste those mana points. That was 3 in a row, I think. Wow. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, there we go. I got him with one. Oh, here I actually used Cure Waltz. I did what I said not to do. But it was the end of the fight anyways. It probably was necessary at that point. I did notice my HP levels were getting pretty low. I can see him being a rough fight if you get a fight like what I just had, where he's disappearing quite often and hitting your whole team with, you know, just under 1,000 damage per. That'll wear out your white mage real quick. You won't be able to keep up. Even if you're doing Kiraja, you just won't be able to cast it fast enough to keep up. But a good rule of thumb would be just keep Matoya on her sensing. I feel obligated to point out right now that this right here is another place where the track that I keep saying throughout this walkthrough that's missing should be. Every time that there's like this kind of sad or weird moment, there's these awkward pauses through the game where it really feels like there should be music and there just isn't. This is one of those moments. Now we're all dancers. Amazing. Breathtaking even. Oh, Alba. Always something to say. I have to say, you know, earlier in this video I had mentioned that I'm not attached to any character. Now, I'm not attached to Alba, but I like Alba's character. She's quirky, she's funny, she's very much unlike any other Final Fantasy character. They did a pretty good job writing her dialogue. And it's funny because it almost feels a little edgy. I mean, they've dealt with like porn magazines and stuff in this game and talked about them. And Alba's just kind of like this, she's a dirty girl, man. She does just dirty stuff. She talks about dirty things. And I think that's unique. It's different than what you normally would see with Final Fantasy characters. Anyways, that's it for this piece of the walkthrough. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you on the next piece.